Hey, my name is Melinda Russell, and I am obsessed with telling the stories of women involved in motorsport, young and older, from all walks of life, currently involved in a wide range of roles or sharing their stories from the past. I'm a wife, mother of 4 adult children, and a mama of 16. In 2017, I was searching social media for a group dedicated to women in motorsports. When I didn't find what I was looking for, I posted a message to a few racing pages to see if any women would like to connect with me. And now I have thousands of women and men who are part of the Women's Motorsports Network. As crew chief of the only media company dedicated to women in motorsports, I work from wherever my travels take me, publishing this podcast, the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, and Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show. You will hear from women who share their stories from the grid of life, how they manage the messy and memorable moments of family, work, and racing. You will hear their tried and true secrets of success, and many other topics like friendships, family, hardships, and heroes that women deal with to balance the seasons of life. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, make sure you are comfy, and get ready to be inspired and encouraged from the stories on the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Have you heard of Youth Racers of America, Inc.? It is a 501c3 nonprofit designed to provide camps, clinics, safety gear, and educational resources for youth race car drivers across the nation. YRA helps racers through 3 main categories: current youth racers and families, families new to youth racing, and career opportunities for teens. One of the benefits of being a member of the YRA is safety gear discounts. Members who order through YRA receive 15 to 40% off their orders from companies that they partner with. So visit youthracersofamerica.com/register to sign up your youth racer. That's youthracersofamerica.com/register. Enjoy all the member benefits and more for only $20 per year. Or call 844 YRA Kids to find out more. Hey, everybody, it's Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network. And no, this is not a woman today, but you know that we do some bonus episodes. And on our bonus episodes, they're wide open. And so it could be anyone from different industries, man, woman, whatever it might be. And so I'm really excited to have Shayne McGowan with me today. His business is, I want to get it right, Shayne, Mental Edge Performance. And his resume is so long, I'm not even going to try. But Shayne, I want you to just first tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, your pets, where you live, whatever you're willing to share. And then I want you to just let my listeners know what you do and why you do it, because I think that this is going to be one of those podcasts that they're going to want to listen to more than once. So, Shayne, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. So I played football down south at USC, and then I made it up here to the CFL in Canada, and that's where I reside right now, is Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Canada. So I'm about 6 hours north of Minneapolis, I guess is the easiest way to describe it. And from that time, you know, I got into this line of work, I guess you say, because of when I did play football. And back in the days, I'm a 55-year-old man now, so I've been around for a little bit and things like that. And during my time, when I played football, one of the biggest things, and I think the biggest obstacle back in the days, was coaches were coaching, players played, and that was it. You didn't have that sort of extra person that you could talk to if things weren't happening, or if you weren't feeling it, or you were down, or you can't get yourself up, or you can't get yourself ready, and things like that.
Mhm.
And little confusions, overthinking the process too much too during the game time. And so as that started developing, I got more and more in touch with myself and going, you know what, this isn't just a physical aspect anymore. This now becomes a mental aspect. This becomes more of the mindset and how do we deal with certain things in certain situations, and how can I evolve better as a player and make myself better too, and things like that. So I went into the psychology department and started figuring some things out, talking to different people and other coaches from other sports later on, and realizing that, yeah, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not having what you need in the mental side of the game to perform at your elite level, you're going to suffer. There's going to be drawbacks, there's going to be setbacks. And again, as you went on with that too, I started to also realize and saying, you know what? Even if there is a setback, how do I get out of it? How do I get myself refocused, regrouped, and reset to go again? And that was also the other issue of certain things too. So then I started realizing, I started watching more and more athlete sports, and even at the time myself playing and things like that, and going, okay, I gotta figure this out up here. It's a little bit more up here. And finally, when my football days were over and everything like that, I journeyed more into this, and I realized that athletes, coaches, everybody needs that extra edge to get themselves going, and they need that to keep themselves playing at the highest level. You take Olympic athletes, for example. I remember Usain Bolt said this. I trained four years just to run 10 seconds. So for that 4 years, you're training, but you're having drawbacks, you're having setbacks. You got to enter certain competitions, but it's not always your best day. You might not do as well as you wanted to. Your training's not going as great as you wanted to, and things like that. But you got 4 years to try to get this thing in order, just to go out there for that one day and become that good. So a lot of it was a little bit more in the mental side of it. And then you also look at different, as I look at other sports that are very high level, whether it be a combative sport like boxing or MMA and things like that. I mean, in between rounds, you got to figure things out real fast, whether you're winning or losing and stuff. And then you look at this sport of NASCAR racing and things like that. All of a sudden, you're out there in a field of so many greats, and you're trying to keep the lead. Let's say you start at the back. Well, I got to get to the front, or I'm in the mid and I got to get to the front. I want to win this race. Our company relies on this race. There's so much pressure put on everybody and things like that. You know what I mean? So this is where I started to develop more of my opportunity to say, okay, you know what? We got to work with everybody. We got to work on the mindset. We got to keep everybody in the game so that they're just as competitive. Because I could take every racer, and I think you could agree with this. If we're just looking at NASCAR right now, you could take all the great racers, okay, and go, what separates them other than the vehicle possibly? But what is separating them from actually being number one all the time? And a lot of it's just right up here. You know what I mean? It's not the skills all the time. It's not the vehicle all the time. We could have the same vehicles. We could have the same person that's done this for years upon years. But it's who knows how to be smarter than the other, be confident than the other, stay focused, especially when you're going at those speeds and everything like that. So this is where I discovered and realized that, my business that I needed to get into was this, to help athletes as we move forward.
And so, when you say it is, and I often say mind over matter, right?
Yes.
I just had knee replacement surgery actually 4 weeks ago. And my PT gals they're like, Melinda, you are so far ahead of most people at this point. And they've told me that since the second week I've gone. And they're like, this, and telling me things. And I'm like, yeah, mind over matter. Race season's coming up. I got to be able to get to the track and. And so when you say, you could have two drivers drive for the same company.
Yeah.
And their cars are set up exactly the same. And one is at the front of the field and one is at the back. And it's consistent that way. It's not just 1 week or 2 weeks.
Right.
And a lot of that is, what baggage are they bringing into the sport, into that race, that day, that week, that month, whatever has happened. And so we have to get our mental game as successful as our physical and our technical game.
Exactly. And you nailed that, especially because like you said, is one's at the front, one's at the back in that type of thing, or even if one's in the middle in there. The problem is you want both as a business, as a corporation and things like that. You want your drivers to be in that top three, top five all the time. There's no question
Mhm.
about it. I don't want so and so being number one and my other guy being number 30. You want everybody to be right there. And them as drivers also want to be there. There's no question about it. And a
Yes.
lot of it. And so when you look at that and say, okay, now we got to stay focused. We both got to be laser sharp ready. We both got to make sure that we're working together. But again, too, is in some ways, when it comes to the drivers out there and they understand it, and as an example, if you and I were the drivers out there and I'm in the lead and you're say number 12 right now, I'm trying to keep myself in that lead. You're trying to move up each time. You know what I mean? There's no question about that. So there's a lot more pressure on me to keep that lead as there is to you to say, oh, I'm going to catch you. I'm
Yeah.
going to come catch you. So
Oh,
now
yeah.
I've got to make sure that I've got everything of what they're telling me, what's happening behind me, who's coming, and everything like that to stay focused, to know when I got to make the stop to change things, when I got to get in there, and when I got to make sure who's coming up behind me and beside me and things like this too. So my focus, look at the end of those races, if you're not mentally drained and exhausted, not just physically, but mentally
Hmm.
because of everything that's happening, like I swear half those guys that are that good need to go have a nap after because they're just exhausted. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because of that. And that's what makes it so exciting. But that's what they love. That's what they live for. And then you'll look at the one fella that has that mental breakdown, and all of a sudden there's a chaotic crash. You know what I mean? And things like that because they lost focus of what was coming around them and by them, and their pit crew and everybody like that was telling them, but it was going to one ear and out the other because they got rattled. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And things like that. And same with the guys that are accidentally hitting into each other too. They got rattled because they're being
Yeah.
told things so bloody fast. Because just like I do, you go from 0 to 100 just like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of these situations, and you got to be ready. So there's a lot of pressure in that type of situation, and these guys have to be on their game, no question about it. But this is the type of stuff that you have to practice and train for. And this is something that I guess I should have brought up too. Is when I'm working with athletes and things like that, I will put them into that situation. I'll put them into that pressure situation. And I don't know if necessarily how much they do that in NASCAR and things like that when they're doing their qualifiers or they're just training on their own and things like that. But when it comes to certain sports, and I look at say combative sports and things like that, I'll say, hey, you're losing right now. You know what I mean? You got to pick this up, right? Just in practice. How are you going to feel and how are you going to respond?
Hmm.
That's the biggest question because as an example, I could take a boxer, for example. You won the first round, but we're coming out for the second. Well, that second round, you're losing now. And this is just in training. How are you going to respond back? You know what I mean? Those are the type of things I think drivers also need to feel too when they're doing their own qualifiers and things like that, is being fed those little bit of information saying, okay, we've gone from second to now fifth. So and so has passed us. We got to catch it up. What are you going to do? Put it down, hammer it. Let's go, ease up a little bit. But that's the type of stuff where then when a driver is out there in game time situation, you're not rattled because you've practiced it. You understand it. You know what's going on and things like that. So those are the sort of scenarios that I think as coaches and everything like that, they need to throw at their athletes in every sport that there is just to make them feel this is race time, even though we're practicing, but this is game time scenario. How are we going to respond? And what do we do if this
Well,
happens or something happens?
because how we practice is how we perform.
Exactly.
And, you know, yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking the crew chiefs need some of this training too, because they're talking to their driver. So let's say they go from second to fifth or second to
Yeah.
12th,
Yeah.
and their crew chief needs to know what to say to that driver to get him back in the right frame of mind and not put him in a worse frame of mind. And so
Right.
it isn't necessarily, I'm talking racing, obviously, but it could be other sports as well. The people that are mentoring or coaching those athletes also need to understand the right things to say, the wrong things to say, so that they're always pumping those people up.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
this is where we use a lot of cue words. You know what I mean? Every sport should have cue words that work for that specific athlete, or in this case, a driver and things like that, because
Hmm.
we all understand that. And you just nailed that one too, is saying if I'm in second and all of a sudden I drop to 12th, what cue words do I need to not keep me rattled where I'm now going down to 15th to 23rd and so on and so on. I got to get back in that race without it being more of like, oh, my crew is getting mad at me here, so now I got to push it, and now I'm not focusing and I'm losing control, instead of
Yeah.
saying we're good, we're calm, okay,
Right.
let's do this, you know what I mean? So you're right, there's no question about it. And I think sometimes there's an old school mentality and new school mentality, you know
Hmm.
and in ways you got to try to balance it, because I still believe that there's old school things that can be done that are useful, but I also believe that we got to introduce some new things to help people understand, because as an example, the drivers that are coming in now, they're getting younger, they want to branch in there, they want to get their feet wet, they want to get in there and things like that. So they're a little bit, they're not quite used to what old school was at certain times.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of, and I don't want to say baby them, because that's not what this is about. It's not about
No.
babying anybody, but it's
No.
about teaching them. And me as that coach, crew member, things like that, understanding what they need to get them on the right path, the right track, and
Yeah.
stay focused during this whole thing.
Well, and especially like you say, these younger drivers, they haven't got the maturity yet either.
Yeah.
To handle when you think that you've got a Denny Hamlin who's in his 40s, who's been driving how long, and
Right.
then you've got Zane Smith. Let's say he's a rookie in the Cup Series, even
Exactly.
though he's a great driver and the person that he is wonderful, but yet he is young and there's situation he hasn't encountered, and the whole remaining calm under pressure, that I think is a learned skill that most people don't have, and staying calm and taking a breath and all those things. And they have to be trained in that area, and I don't know that much about what NASCAR teams do or don't do about that kind of training, but I can't imagine that they get near enough of that
No.
kind of thing, because it's about, once racing season starts, we're going from this track to this track to this track, and so they're doing the simulation and they're getting ready for that certain track,
Yes.
and they probably would be good to spend a little more time getting their whole body and mind ready instead of just the technical of a certain track.
Exactly. And look, we can't disagree with that. Technically, yes, you got to understand the track you're going through, the weather conditions that can play a bit of a damper on things and all that stuff like that, how we're going to adjust to it. But overall, that trust between you and your coach, you and your crew, you and everybody has to be so solid that the
Mm-hmm.
comfort there is like without a question of a doubt. You have to know each other like the back of the hands. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? As we always say. And that when you have that, you're more than comfortable and confident in what's being said to you. The only thing then that happens is you may get off kilter because you lost focus in something. Now, let's say the
Mm-hmm.
track is wet from a storm or something like that that's come through. Like, I mean, we're taking Florida weather and all that because that's where everything's running. So we understand that these things can come in and go out, but it's just caused that little bit of uncomfortableness. And some
Mm-hmm.
drivers are uncomfortable with it. But how do I then get you comfortable? Because we gotta go out there and perform today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's the biggest thing. So, you got to work on these things. And I think that's where it comes into I said practicing during practice times and things like that. They have to understand and say, oh, we got the perfect surface right now. Okay, but let's imagine that this sucker went wet. How would you handle going into turn three? You know what I mean? It's a
Mm-hmm.
little slick up there. I need you to go either higher, I need you to go low. You need to focus on this, right? And you got to keep that saying, we're coming to turn three. Where are you going? I'm going low. Here we go. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you understand, you know what's going on. And that to me is where you see the success of racers and
Yeah.
drivers that understand and have worked like that. And the newcomers need to build that reputation with their coaches and everybody like this. And they need to practice that.
Yeah. The other person that I'm thinking of is a spotter. They have
Oh,
such
yes.
an impact over the driver, um, as far as staying calm, go high, go low.
Yeah.
And like you said, they've got somebody talking in this ear, and then they got somebody talking in this ear, and pit right now or whatever.
Yeah.
And it can just I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that car and have those people yelling in your ear. But they just have to do the best they can. But the more training they have and the more preparation as far as staying calm, you know, all those kind of factors, I think, to me, in any sport, the mind game is right up there at the top with the skill.
Most definitely, most definitely, and you nailed that one too with the spotters and things like that. Because, like you said, sometimes there's so much communication in, and never mind, I got 10 cars beside me that are just revving. I'm trying to hear everything that's going
Yeah.
on too, and yet stay in my lane type of thing, and try to get out of there. So
Right.
you're right. There's a lot of can be a lot of confusion, and yet there can also be a lot of things that can just flow properly the way you want them to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think also biggest thing too is when it comes to, as an example, NASCAR and stuff, is the patience of the game too. I've been watching this last little bit, these last few weekends and stuff, and you're seeing a lot of drivers a little impatient,
Oh, yeah.
you
A
know,
little,
and a
a
you know,
lot
and
impatient.
exactly, and that's causing a lot of chaos in some ways. And you're
Sure.
also noticing, and I don't know if you've seen this, but at the end of the races, a lot of confrontations amongst some of
Yeah.
them, right?
Hmm.
Again, impatient on things, right? They're not happy about this because stuff's going down. Well,
Right.
you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, etc., and yada yada. But I mean, that's what I've just noticed this last little, and it's early in the season by all means, but
It
a lot of
is.
impatience going on right now. And I think that's something that really should be addressed in some ways, because we got to understand this sport, you got to have patience. You got
Yeah.
to understand, if I'm going 200 laps or 260 laps, I got to have some patience out there. You know what I mean?
You
And things
can't
like this.
wreck in the first two laps at, I think it was Atlanta or somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the patience. And I listen to a lot of racing podcasts, and one of my favorite ones is Dale Jr. He has the Dale Jr. download, and he has good guests on, and that. But they also talk about some of the other ones I listen to too. They talk about there's no respect anymore. you know
Yes.
Drivers, even though they were competitive and they might give you a bump or two to get around you, there was still respect among the drivers. And the more you hear Denny Hamlin or Kyle Busch or some of the older drivers, they feel like the young guns are just out hell's bells, and no respect for being a clean professional race car driver. It's like you said, all about getting to the front.
Yes, and I totally agree with that, and I've actually sort of noticed that in many sports too. As the younger generation comes in on things, you're sort of forgetting who actually set, the grassroots for you guys. You know what I mean,
Hmm.
and things like that, and started everything. And you're right, the respect is getting to be a little bit iffy at times, and to me,
Yeah.
that sort of defeats what these everybody has worked so damn hard to get to and become, and to make it successful for you to come into this sport too. You know what I mean? And we look at that. So I do think that there needs to be a little bit of, I guess you want to put them all in one room and say, listen, smarten your asses up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're not here because you're that good. We got you here. We created things for you. We opened doors for you. You
Hmm.
know, now as you carry that torch, because eventually everyone's going to move on and things like that. There's going to be a torch passed down to the next in that
Yeah.
way. Do it with some dignity, show that respect, show the pride of the sport that you're in,
Yeah.
and make us, when we do eventually leave, we're leaving this on good terms, good hands, and proud, instead of it just being a whole
Yeah.
dysfunctional and saying, oh, they're just in it for the money, they just want that big trophy, they just want the sponsors and all this stuff like that. But yeah, money is great. There's no question about that. Sponsors are great. The celebrity status is great. But in the end, when your legacy, because everybody that does something in a sport has a legacy. What are you
Hmm.
leaving behind as that legacy? Are
Yeah.
you leaving behind being one of the greats? are you leaving behind? I was a total jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. And all you have to do is, look back at NASCAR in the past, and you've got your legacy drivers, you've got your jerk, the ones that were
Yeah.
jerks. And, and it's funny because I get a magazine called Pole Position, and it's all
Yes.
about NASCAR. It's a great magazine. And they just had some quotes yesterday from different drivers, and some of them, were still talking bad about a driver that wrecked him or whatever, and what a bad driver he was, and the kind of reputation he still has today, and he hasn't raced for 20 years. I
Right.
don't want to be that guy.
No. No, there's no question about that. Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying is those are the things that will stick with you. You know what I mean? In that way. And it's funny, I know now how much they call DFS sports betting has taken over when it comes to
Yeah.
this. And if you
Mhm.
ever watch when it comes to, say, as an example, race time, say for this Saturday, whatever race is coming up, etc., and they start doing the DraftKings and all this stuff like that of the betting, all those guys that have the whole spreadsheets out and things like that, and they're picking apart each driver. You know what I mean? And these are the ones too that are also causing a lot of controversy amongst
Yeah.
things too because of the betting market. And I mean, money is huge when it comes to all of this. So we
Yeah.
understand that. But that's also a reputation that follows you too when you're hearing these guys that are making the bet saying, I would stay away because he's a natural crasher. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And all this. And yet now I'm that driver. I'm going, you know what? I had a bad spill. Yeah, I messed up on this. Now I got DFS telling me that I'm that bad too. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure from everywhere. And now
Yes.
that's another thing that as a driver, you got to look at and say, okay, I can't get into my head about this. I got to
Right.
go out there and do my race and things like this. But I think too is like then it plays the fact of, are they a smart driver? Are they a reckless driver? In
Yes.
some ways.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of Dale Jr., he just had Chase Elliott on a couple weeks ago, and I don't know how much you follow NASCAR, but last year, Chase was out quite a bit of the season with his broken leg, and
Yeah.
then he got suspended for a race, and those kind of things for sure get in your head. And he had a great interview with him, and I thought Chase was very open and forthcoming about the struggles that he went through. And for a guy that's pretty private, you don't really hear him speak out much. But on that podcast, he said, yeah, I really struggled with this. I'm struggling with this now, or whatever it might be. And that's the other side. You know, um, don't hide it. Don't pretend
No.
everything's okay. If you're struggling, whether you're in racing or in your daily life, you need to talk to somebody. You need to get your head straight. And I think, we hear more and more about mental health and helping people. That's what we're talking about here is mental health for athletes. Be in the right frame of mind, stay positive, do all these things, self-talk. How do you talk to
Oh,
yourself?
and
Those kind
and
of
and
things.
that's and we forget that not only do you do your sport, but you got a life outside of it.
Right.
You right? Like whether you're married, single, common law, whatever it might be, children, no children, etc.
Yeah.
Like I said, you have a life. And guess what? Your life can get chaotic. And now I got to go do a job,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of outside distractions, as we call
Hmm.
them, that can interfere with your performance. Now, you want to make sure that you, as they always say, I leave work at work, home at home, etc.,
Yeah.
yada, yada. We don't do that. It's very hard to do that.
Absolutely.
If I come home, I just finished racing, I come home and I just crashed my car, I'm not going to be a happy guy at home.
No.
My sponsors are mad at me, my pit crew's mad at me, I'm mad at myself, I'm mad at who's ever, possibly it wasn't even my fault, but somebody crashed me,
Right.
and now I got to deal with all this.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh well, we'll get it next weekend. It doesn't work like that. You know what I
No,
mean?
and when
You
they
have to.
interview him, when they interview those guys after the race, well, how did you feel when your car got thrown into the
No,
fence? It's the stupidest question ever. And then
it is.
and then 9 out of 10 will say, "Well, we'll get him next week." Okay,
Right.
that's fine to say that in front of the camera,
Yeah.
but I'm sick of hearing you say that. Why don't you
Yeah.
just say, "You know what? I got to get my shit together. I got to
Yeah.
I got to do this. My pit crew's got to, work harder,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I don't
Yeah.
want to hear, oh, we'll get them next week, because I hear that all the time and it means nothing to me anymore. Be
And we hear
honest.
that.
And
Yeah. We
yeah,
do. We hear that in every sport, every media thing. How did you feel after the loss? Well, how do you think I felt after the loss? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. And I've done enough radio shows and things like that, and I've asked enough questions to athletes and players and etc. That is the last thing I will ever ask them. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
I know how you're feeling.
right.
And the public knows how you're feeling. If
Sure.
I can if I can make my question though go into the direction of all right, I know you feel the pitch. Can you sort of address it a little bit? You know what I mean? In a way that makes them still feel, you know what? He's not putting me down. It just
Yeah.
sucks that this happened. You know what I mean? But honestly, I'm mad about it. But I gotta do something, and we will get back on the track and do it. But
Yeah.
they don't do that. Like, it's just so
No.
silly when they ask some of those questions. And as a driver or athlete or anything, even a coach, you're not
Yeah.
happy. You know what I
No.
mean? So now you got to take that home for the week and everything like that and come back and
Hmm.
try to perform again. But
Yeah.
yet, like I said, I also believe, especially when it comes to NASCAR and stuff, crashing or being in a crash of some kind is still going to be nerve-wracking for you come the following week. There's
Oh,
no question
yeah.
about it. You can't deny that. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're watching them qualify and where they're going to be, the lap positions, everything like that, you can still see at times ones that are hesitant.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now,
Yeah.
as that crew chief, as everybody, how am I going to get you to feel okay? You know what I
Right.
mean? You've done this a
Hmm.
thousand times,
Yep.
right? You know what you're doing.
Yep.
We got to put last week away and focus on this week.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think they do enough of.
No, I don't think they do either. And crashing is crashing. And I think about Ryan Preece last year. He flipped 8 or 9 times over
Yeah.
and over and over and over and got out of the car, and he raced the next weekend.
Yeah.
And that really takes some mental toughness
It
or
does.
something, or he's crazy, one or the other. I don't know which, but
Yeah.
I think about Ty Gibbs, who
Right.
got a lot of crap the last couple years, let's be honest. And he's a great race car driver. And I was at Phoenix the year that he won the championship in Xfinity, which was a couple of years ago now. And the next morning his father's passed away.
Right.
And I think, how does a young kid, and he's young, how does a young kid like that overcome going to any racetrack, much less Phoenix, knowing that how important his dad was to his racing and everything? Like you said, they have lives. And I have thought about him so many times when I've seen him race. And people are so quick to judge, and they don't know what he's going through. And so
No.
we need to put ourselves in those shoes and
Yes.
be like, how would I be? I'd be a mess if I was back at Phoenix and that happened.
And look at, when we take as an example a passing away, a death of a family member, close member, whatever it might be, we can all understand people can grieve differently. There's no question about it, and things like
Yes.
that. And in some ways, sometimes an athlete in a sport or whatever might say, "I'm going out there to do this for them." You know what I
Right.
mean? But you
Yes.
still have to grieve
Mhm.
after. Like, you still got to find that time to
Yeah.
let your own self be a little relieved on certain things that have just transpired. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you're right. There is a process. There's a progression, and this is why you need that tight knit crew group of people that can
Mhm.
help you through this and
Yeah.
understand. I understand it's tough. If this is what you want, then I've got you 100%. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I don't want you in that car if you're not 100%.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's not worth it in any case, in any scenario, any situation. And there's no way anybody's going to be upset at you because of what just transpired, by all
No.
means. Are you 100% and can you go? In this case with Ty, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, like I said, there's some people that can handle that and say,
Yeah.
I need it for my own personal, this is what I think I want to do it for dad or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you've got others that are just reckless, that they're just blind. They just don't see what's happening.
Yeah.
And those are the ones where I think, as coaches, as crew, and everybody like that, they can kind of go, okay, time out here. You are
Yeah.
not ready. And I got to pull the pin on you for this one.
Right.
We need to get some help here. We need to get this figured out because emotionally, you're going to make and break down in something that just isn't beneficial for anybody, and it's
Yeah.
going to cause a lot of heartache and problems and set us back, set you back, and that's
Yes.
not what we want. So you're
Yeah.
right. There's a lot of things, and this is you're right. The public does not know what anybody goes
Hmm.
through. They just
No.
want to know what they're betting on because they want to make money. B, because they love the sport, or they might like the love the players that are out there, or the racers that are out there and following that intensely. But again, you don't know their personal lives, and that's another tough thing to deal with too. And like I said, so as a driver, in many cases, you might be the most favorited and everything, but you also then got more pressure because of that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you got to say, okay, well, I got to go up there and start performing. I got to start doing this. I got to, keep up, keep up, keep up. Well, guess what? You have a bad day and everybody's all over you. How are you
Yeah.
going to handle that too?
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, is how are you going to handle it in that way, right? So,
Right.
like I said, there's a lot that goes into this, and it's
Yeah.
not physically anymore. It's up here now.
Yeah. So Shayne, tell me more about, like, can athletes reach out to you and you take them on as clients? Tell me about that part of what you do.
Right. So mostly what ends up happening is, yes, the referral athletes, everything like that, teams, etc., will reach out and say, "Hey, listen, we're interested in getting you in as a coach." Blah blah blah. My first thing, though, what I always do is, and I'll always say this: why do you think you need a mental game coach? Right? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that's and I want to see what they respond back with, because a lot of times they just, I don't want to say it's a fad, it's a trend, it's whatever. I want to know specifics before I start working with you to know exactly what's going on. Because a
Right.
lot of things can be very, very easy to deal with, but then other things can be a lot more complicated, right?
Hmm.
So I need to get inside and in deep with you and stuff like that. And then when I do take on people and everything like that, I make sure that when we're talking, it's in your environment that you like. Where is your comfort? You know what I mean? As an example, when I work with football players and stuff, a lot of times they just want to be on a field. Okay, let's sit in the stands. There, we're on the field. You know what I mean? This is where you're the most comfortable, right?
Right.
NASCAR, it could be at the track. I just love it here. I just feel this is my home. This is where I'm okay. So let's talk. Let's see what's going on. So when you get into their comfort zone, they let out more.
Yes.
Right? They talk more, they open up more. You can then understand and figure things out a little bit quicker. And a lot of times they also realize things too when you start giving them, because as an example, I'm the outsider. You know what I mean? I'm not in your group. I'm not in your clique. I'm not part of your crew. Nothing like that. I'm the outsider. So it's a fresh set of ears, fresh set of eyes. And because again, I got like 5 TVs, so I watch sports after sports after sports. I see everything that's going on by all means of what's happening. I have a good understanding, of what it is that's needed and so on and so on. But in the end, you have to be the one that has to be truthful about what's going on with yourself, what you feel uncomfortable with, what you feel you're lacking, what you think you need. And then there's a set of homework that you're going to get, and you got to do it. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
is how this works. This is the only way this is going to work, you know?
Yeah.
And then eventually, sometimes, as an example, you might have to incorporate the coach or the crew into the program as well. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
certain cases. When it's a team, it's a little bit different on things, but when it's an individual sport, you then sometimes need to incorporate, say, a coaching or whatever. And depending on the ages and stuff, it could be parents, could be whatever.
Right. Right. That's interesting. So how do they get a hold of you? Where, my team needs help. Where do
Right.
they reach out and give me your information?
My information, I deal on social media and everything like that. So on my Instagram and Facebook accounts and things like this, it's mental_edge_performance. That's where you reach me, Shayne McGowan,
Okay.
and it's just all in there.
Okay. Easy. That's easy peasy to
It
find.
is, and I find it to be the easiest because, like I said, in this day and age,
Yeah.
everybody is on it.
Right.
Everybody is there, and it's just one person sees something, they pass it, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, you know what I mean? And it's a domino effect. And this is just how it is and things. And then, like I said, once you get into, as an example, I work with one team or one player. Next thing you know, I got another team because he's talking to other players from another team and
Exactly.
so on. And then in NASCAR, it's the same thing. I got one driver who's good, but okay, well, Joe Gibbs over, they want to talk to you too. Okay, well, you know what I mean? So it just
Yeah.
everybody works that way together because everybody, put it this way, we're all equal in the vehicles, like we talked, the athletes and stuff like that. But who's got the edge? It's the one that's got upstairs,
Yeah.
it's the confidence.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, I just can't even imagine that every person, every athlete couldn't use something that you could share with them.
And really that's what it comes down to nowadays. It really does. It's one of those things where it's like you said, and I've tell this especially to rookies coming out of college that are going into their basketball or NFL football. What separates you from the rest?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because guess what? You're all the same size. You
Yeah.
can all do the same at your position. You're all doing the same thing. It's
Hmm.
the one that can say, from the first play of the game, I'm just as strong at the last play of the game.
Yeah.
And I'm not just physically, but I'm up here. I'm in control. I
Yeah.
don't I don't do dumb things. I'm focused. I understand I know I'm coachable. That's
Right.
huge. You know what I
That
mean?
is
Same
huge.
thing with NASCAR. Are you coachable? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Do you listen or are you reckless? Right.
Yeah.
And these are the things that are going to make or break you in so many ways.
Right.
And it's also in when you look at team sports, it can what cut you, right,
Hmm.
and release you, or it can make you a stellar and a star. And to me, that's huge. So
Yeah.
I'm that type of a player, person, I guess you could say, whereas I'm here to make you better.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what I mean? I want you to succeed. When I see my athletes and everybody like that succeed, team succeed, I'm just like, this is perfect.
You're
This is
like a
what you want.
proud papa.
You are. And I
Yeah.
think to me, that's the way it should be. You know,
Sure.
to me, that's the professionalism that needs to be. Whereas in the end, those athletes and coaches and teams and everybody can look back and say, I am so grateful because that's the person that pushed me to be what I
Yeah.
needed to be.
Yeah.
Perfect. I did my job.
You know, I'm lucky that I have a couple of young men in my circle of life that are professional athletes. And I see how, and one's in pro football and one's pro baseball, professional baseball. And so, but I see how they get jerked around.
Oh
They
yeah.
get brought up to play and then they get knocked. Let's say baseball, they could bring him up to pitch in a game and then he didn't have a good outing, they put him back down and up and down and up and down, and same with the football, and I'm sure it's same with basketball and every other sport.
It is.
But the mental, it's like, oh, I'm excited, I'm gonna be in the bigs, we call it. and
Yeah.
then and then oh, I didn't have a good outing, it wasn't my best day, and they jerk you back down, and your mental, like, oh,
You're
I can't even
fatigued.
imagine to
You're
overcome and be like,
fatigued.
I'm
Yes.
better than this.
Yes.
But but to keep telling yourself that over and over, and the back and forth, you know being close enough to see how that works, I can understand why athletes do some of the things they do,
Oh,
and not that it's an excuse, but they don't know how to handle it.
no. And they're a yo-yo. You become a yo-yo,
Exactly.
right? And you did a prime example when it comes to pitchers,
Yep.
right? Of baseball. Okay, you're up. And especially right now, because baseball's starting today and everything like
Today.
that, right? So you
Yep.
got everybody out there. I'm on the mound and I'm getting bombed on me. Now what happens? Okay, you're going back to the farm, right?
Yep.
Yet you're good enough to play in the big leagues.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
Mm-hmm.
problem is you had that bad day.
Yeah.
So now it comes to and this is when I've worked with guys, I've said, okay, well, how do I not have a bad day? Right? What's my routine to make it more successful every time?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is a lot of times, and I'll use this quickly as examples, pitchers sometimes think, you're not going to get one on me. You're not going to get one on me. You can't think like that because they are going to get one on you. They're going to be sneaky. You got to play your game. What are your
Mm-hmm.
strengths to their weaknesses, right? How
Yeah.
much did you do your homework to know this is who's coming up the bats? All right. What is he like? What is he like? What is he like? Okay, well, I'm going to throw him this. I'm going to throw him this. I'm going to throw him this. Or if I can't throw that, how am I going to get around it? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And things. But this is where you rely on you saying, I got this. I got this. I got
Yeah.
this. Right. So then when he does get the big hit on you, you're not frustrated. It's like, okay, I got the next one. Bam, out. Okay, we're out. We're done. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
is the type of mentality that they have to have instead of just being head down, sinking, and then it's just a droopy time where it's
And it
all of a
goes
sudden,
downhill from there.
oh, it does. It really does. And then it's like, okay, now you go back down to the farm and you got to get ridiculed by some of the guys down there because you weren't good enough to make it to the big. So now you got to fight your way back up again.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's a very tough situation in that way. Like that is one position that I really would not want to play as well as a quarterback, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, because you're in charge of everything,
Right.
right? It's a lot of pressure. So
A
when
lot of
athletes,
pressure.
young guys are grooming to go, I want to be a pitcher, I want to be a quarterback. Do you really? Because
Yeah.
you got a lot you got to face. But I understand there are going to be some that are phenomenal, but there are many things that you got to also incorporate. It's not going to have that big shoulder. It's got to have this upstairs. You
Yeah.
got to take the wins with the defeats. You have to understand the patience and be good at what you do, but also understand how to execute it and do your homework. That's
Yeah.
the big things.
Yeah. And visualization. My son-in-law,
Oh,
one of my son-in-laws is big on. He's one of the most positive people you would ever meet, and he was a baseball pitcher and he's a baseball coach, trainer. He trains
yes,
kids from little kids to major league athletes. He works with them, but he is one of the most positive, well-rounded, and I look at him because a lot of coaches, when you think of a coach, it's the guy yelling at the player from the sidelines, whereas my son-in-law is the one who's giving you positive quotes, positive reinforcement,
cheering you. Yep.
teaching you about nutrition and mindset, the
Yes.
whole picture. And I think he needs to be not just coaching kids, he needs to be coaching coaches
Yes.
because he's so good at what he does. But visualization, if you visualize throwing a strike, you're more likely to do it than if you're thinking, okay, I know he's going to get a hit. I know he's going to get a hit. And so part of it is again, it's mindset, mind over
It is.
matter. I'm going to throw a strike.
Look at visualization is one of the biggest things we could ever do to help us into any game or situation that we want to get into. I need to see myself performing at my
Yeah.
best. I need to feel that. I need to. I've worked with guys, and visualization is one of the biggest ones too. Is where I've had them sit in that room, their eyes closed. Just you can smell the where you are. You can hear the sound. You can
Mm-hmm.
feel. You know what I mean? Whatever's going on, that you're that much seeing it, and then you're
Yeah.
seeing, as an example, that ball go across the plate and bam, it's a strike. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
know it and you feel good from it. And that's the biggest thing is how do you feel about that one? I'm
Yeah.
good, but I'm not getting myself too excited. I'm just playing my game. I'm in
Yeah.
control, right? That's one of the biggest things. So the more that he keeps doing that for the young ones,
Yeah.
right? The better off they're going to be because they're going to take that and carry it forward as they
Mm-hmm.
move on and upward. And you're right though about coaches when it comes to the positive attitudes like that, huge, right?
Yeah.
I understand there's a time to complain and give them a little bit of shit, but there's
Yeah.
also times where it's like, you did well, good job. You know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
though you might not have gotten what you wanted, you still performed pretty damn good here. Like you got to give some praise as well.
Yeah. There has to be a balance for
There
sure.
does. There
Yeah.
does.
Shayne, I could talk to you for hours.
Yes.
It's just,
This is fantastic.
it's just kind of in my wheelhouse a little bit, the positivity and and we say, for women, if you see her, you can be her, because so many women, I don't care what sport it is, there's women now who are officials for NFL football, or they
Yeah.
might be a coach or whatever. You didn't see that even 5 years ago. So if you see her, you can be her is something I like to say, when I'm talking to women about what they want and what their goals and dreams are. But it goes for men as well. It's the visualization. I see myself on the pitching mound. I see myself scoring the winning basket in the tournament or whatever it might be. And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
Even driving, I see myself winning, right?
yeah,
I can see myself in between the car. I can see myself passing. I can see myself going
yeah,
around lap 3. I see those are the things that are huge when it comes to the drivers as well when we're talking about this sport as well. You know what I mean? So, you're right.
right.
Visualization is one of my top 3 that I have up there that everybody needs to do on a daily basis too.
Oh, yeah. Is there anything that we haven't? I'm sure there's a lot of things we haven't talked about, but is there anything like major that we haven't talked about that you would really like to share?
I just think like you said this is that you know men and women, like I love the fact of how women now are being more involved in the professional aspects, whether it be reffing, coaching, playing, but also as we look at the sport of NASCAR, okay,
Hmm.
right? Let's get everybody going in there. Let's get that opportunities,
Yeah,
given fair opportunities. Give everybody this opportunity that they've desired and dreamed of and want to do their very best. And honestly, I like it. I love it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But you're
Hmm.
right. They're going to face a lot of different obstacles. And that's where, in this case, they got to start saying that same thing. I'm good at what I do. I
Yeah.
believe in me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Players, how can I say this? Energy is contagious. I always,
Yeah.
always say that. So if a coach comes in with that energy, male or female, you come in with that right energy, that right positiveness. You are not timid. You know what you want. You know what you want from your players, your team, and everything like this. Bam, we feed off of that. We go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Same thing with reffing. Okay, all right, that ref, she's good. She's watching everything, so we got to be on our best
Yeah.
behavior type of thing like that, right? That's respect, but it gives you, like I said, that vote of confidence to know that they're doing their job. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And that's the biggest thing is do your job.
Yeah. I I love basketball, and March Madness is my very
Yeah.
favorite time of year. And this year, I've always kind of watched women's basketball as well. But this year, I've really watched it even during the season because of Caitlin Clark,
Right.
and she's just brought so many people into the sport who never cared anything about it. But I've been watching more of the girls' tournament, and one of the things that I like is when they show the coach giving the pregame talk to the
Yep.
team or the halftime talk to the team. And they're so, you've worked for this, you deserve this, all
Yep.
these things, accolades. And I think
You know,
that's something that maybe, I guess, comes natural, or it doesn't come natural for a coach to tell their team before they start to play. But the positivity, it's all there. It's, you can do it. I'm proud of you. And so I love college
difference.
basketball, and I love
The, the,
watching
the
it right
funniest
now.
thing is, the funniest thing is with all that is you have that same quote from a male coach and a female coach, right? They're
Uh-huh.
both passionate about it. You love that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That shows me the energy that they have. It shows me
Uh-huh.
that they care. They care about their players. They care
Right.
about what happens out there. They want to win just as bad as you do. In fact, they would rather be out there playing half the
Yeah.
time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That to me is so special, right? And even I've watched some men coaches. I'm like, okay, you're just sitting there doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely just doing nothing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Why do you have a job? I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas then I see a lot of the female coaches or assistant coaches even that are trying to get in there
Yeah.
that are passionate.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. And
Yeah.
to me, you keep that going, you are going to see the success that you want.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because things are going to start happening. But to me, that also shows the character of that person too. That isn't made up. That isn't fake.
No.
That is legit. That is real. And I think that's something that we're seeing more of too from a lot of these coaches in that
I
way.
think so
You know what I
too.
mean? And I love that because that is how I've always been. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about when I coach in this aspect too. But as a player, I was always in there like no tomorrow. But to me, that is the way it needs to be for people to get the message, you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? That I'm in this with you. You know,
Yeah.
right? If I could be in there, if I could do it, I would, you know?
Right.
So I think that's something that's very special and very big. So I'm very happy. I'm glad to see a lot of things, and I want to see more success. But I like to see more out there in the NASCAR scene too.
Yeah.
So let's get that going as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. Because there's some really talented
There is.
women, starting to come up and come already there and then coming up behind the ones that are
Yep.
there. There's some really talented women out there that you're going to be hearing their names mentioned quite often, I think, in the very, very near future. And that's pretty exciting for me.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that. And you know what? Let's wake some of these boys up because of some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it too.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, Shayne, thank you so much for taking time today. This has just been amazing, and I know that it's going to help a lot of people. And hopefully, if they need some guidance, they've got somebody now that they can reach out to.
Exactly. Like I said, you can always email me too at my full name, Shayne McGowan1 at gmail.com and stuff like that too. But like
Okay.
I said, I'm on my social media all the time.
Yeah,
So please throw it a follow. Any questions, DM me and things like that. Because like I said, I'm here to help and that's what I do.
that's awesome. Well, thanks again. Have a good weekend, and I'll stay in touch for sure.
Yes, you will. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Take care of your knee too.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Subscribe to my show and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you or someone you know would like to be featured in the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, this podcast, or Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show, contact me via Messenger on Facebook at Melinda Russell, or send me an email at womensmotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com.